Hi, folks. Thanks for coming to my talk. It's really a pleasure to be here presenting in the RCN Symposium. So we'll just dive right in. My name is Matt Fuchsjager. I'm from Brown University, and I'm going to be presenting some research from my lab on the physiological basis of display evolution in golden-colored mannequins. So my lab is really interested in the physiology of sexual selection. So we think about things like if sexual selection is driving the evolution of a new type of behavior, a new trait, a new strategy, how does that work? How might it also change the nervous and muscular systems to support this process? And so in the case of mannequins, which I'm going to talk to you today, we're interested in how the neuromuscular system can evolve to support sexual selection for acrobatic display behavior. So if you've heard anything, or if you heard the first talk in this session, you probably know by now that mannequins are really interesting in that their evolution has been marked by strong sexual selection. And one of the repercussions of this is that many mannequin species, if not most mannequin species, have evolved crazy display behaviors that incorporate all sorts of interesting behavioral maneuvers and acrobatics and athletic-like behavior. And each species seems to perform its own type of behavior. And so they're all quite different, but they're all pretty extraordinary, and they're all pretty kind of physically intensive, if you will. Now, I'm going to focus today on these species in this one particular genus of manakins called Manacus manakins. These are bearded manakins, and they produce kind of one of the most complex, as we've quantified thus far, types of display behavior. Now, most of my work has been done on golden-colored mannequins, which is the mannequin all the way to the left here. And golden-colored mannequins do a number of cool things to court females. One of the more interesting male maneuvers is something called a roll snap, where a male takes its wings, lifts them above its back, and then rapidly hammers them together so the radii collide and create a snap sound. They can do this in rapid succession, and that's what we refer to as a roll snap. And so here is a high-speed video of a roll snap. So this is taken at 125 frames per second, played back at 25 frames per second so we can see it. And so here you go. There's the bird. He lifts his wings, hammers them together. Now, believe it or not, the male actually performed that behavior in about a third of a second. So let me just show you that one more time. Well, I guess it's not going to show again. But so what we know is that the speed on average is about 60 snaps per second. And to contextualize that, we're talking a speed that's roughly 2 times the maximum wing beat frequency a bird of a similar size would use to power flight. So the muscles that are controlling this behavior are pretty fast. They have to be much faster, we think, than otherwise if in a species that doesn't have this behavior. So my research has really focused on this muscle here, the scapulohumerales caudalis. It's a dorsal wing muscle that's involved in wing rotation and wing retraction. We know from some EMG studies that I've done with Barney Schlinger and Leo Fusani and others that this is the main muscle that actuates the roll snap. And some of the physiological work that's come out of my lab has shown that it's especially fast. The twitch kinetics of this muscle have evolved to be almost super fast. And in fact, we think they're the fastest or close to the fastest for most vertebrate limb muscles. And what I was interested in studying, and what I'm going to talk about today, is how SH physiology, particularly speed physiology, relates to display divergence across the Manacus genus. And so working with Franz Galler, a colleague who's at the University of Utah, he's now at Münster in Germany, we combined behavior and muscle physiology in 2 different Manacus species with an aim of tracing the connections between display evolution and muscle performance. I just also want to point out that my PhD student Miles also played a very significant role in putting this project together. So the 3 of us together published a nice paper on this a few years ago. And again, we looked at all 4 species of Manacus manakins. This is white-bearded, golden-collared, white-collared, and orange-collared manakins. And these guys live in Central and South America. They originated from Amazonia and then moved up the Isthmus of Panama and into Central America, where the complex has speciated. So white-bearded manakins are in mostly South America. Golden-colored manakins are in Panama and Colombia. Orange-colored manakins live now in Costa Rica, and white-colored manakins live in Mexico, Nicaragua, Guatemala, these areas along the eastern slope. Now, all bearded manakins share many of their display maneuvers, but as we found out, their roll snaps in particular differ in speed. And we looked at this by collecting recordings of roll snaps from all 4 taxa that are uploaded onto Xenocanto, which is a website or a repository in which bird enthusiasts can store or upload the recordings of their favorite bird species. And so we measured the speed and length of roll snaps from these different taxa. And again, as I said, the speed is significantly different, such that golden-collared manakins roll snap the fastest, whereas orange-collared manakins roll snap the slowest, and the white-bearded and white-collared manakins are somewhere in between. However, the length of the roll snap is statistically indistinguishable among these 4 birds. And this is interesting because it suggests that the roll snap may represent a different motor challenge for each species. So if you think about it, the golden-colored manakin has to produce the same number of snaps, but has to do so much faster. So it needs a much faster SH muscle than the other species. The orange-colored manakin, in theory, has the least significant motor challenge in that it's the slowest. So if you look to the relationship between roll snap speed and length in all species, you find that there's a trade-off. And we detected this using a technique called quantile regression that tests for relationships between your variables, in this case speed and length, across the entire population distribution. So at the 90th percentile, the 80th percentile, the 70th, et cetera, et cetera. And what we find is that golden-colored manakins show a significant negative relationship between length and speed from about the 20th percentile up to the 90th percentile, which means that the entire population distribution is performing their behavior, performing their roll snap in a way that's sufficiently fast to impose some sort of trade-off or cost to length. This relationship was also present in white-collared manakins, but only in the very top percentiles of the population distribution. So only the very fastest white-collared manakins were actually experiencing this trade-off. So we question then whether this effect would result from trade-offs in muscular speed and endurance. And in fact, if you go to the literature, we know that speed and endurance do trade off with one another. So if a muscle or performance is fast, sometimes that means endurance is low, and vice versa. So to look at this, we measured muscle twitch kinetics in situ. And this is just a schematic of the apparatus in which we stuck a stimulator electrodes from a stimulator, I should say, into the muscle of the bird. We hooked a force transducer into that muscle as well. And we could stimulate the muscle at different frequencies and record the tension it placed on the force transducer. This is what a trace looks like. This is a 10 hertz trace. And what you do is you can see below here, this is the amplitude from the stimulator. So the muscle is stimulated, tension is placed on the muscle, and then that tension is relieved when the muscle relaxes. And we can quantify the amount of relaxation and plot it as a function of stimulation frequency. And so these traces are somewhat intuitive. So you have muscle relaxation on the vertical axis, right? So 100% is a fully relaxed muscle. And that stays the same until you get to a stimulation frequency in which relaxation percentage begins to decline and the muscle eventually begins to fuse. From these models, we can then pull out a metric called the half relaxation frequency, which is the inflection point of our model. And this is the frequency at which the muscle contracts to half its estimated functional range. And this is just a good variable because it allows us to compare muscles and species and all that sort of stuff. But this kind of describes the twitch landscape of the muscle. So when we look at our two species, we see that these twitch landscapes are quite different in that the golden-colored manakin has a significantly higher half relaxation frequency than the white-colored manakin. And this suggests that the muscle in the golden-colored manakin is fast. And again, it's really fast. It's able to relax about 50% when it's stimulated at 100 hertz. That makes it about kind of similarly as fast as something like the rattlesnake tail shaker muscle. But when we look to the behavior, we see that the roll snap averages for each species are down here around 55 and 60. So there's a big gulf between what the muscle can do in the golden-colored manakin and what the behavior seems to be doing. And so we wanted to see if this gulf was due to that trade-off between speed and endurance. So when you look at the traces, you can actually get a hint at this. And so our golden-colored manakin shows full relaxation of its SH muscle when it's stimulated at 80 hertz. Tension begins to build, but the relaxation doesn't go back to 100%. So they begin to accumulate what we started to call rapid fatigue. The white-colored manakin doesn't do that. We just see kind of a collective fusion or a collective tightening, locking of the muscle where we're just getting kind of the same level of relaxation across the entire stimulation train. We can then plot this. We can plot the percent relaxation as a function of twitch number within a train at a given stimulation frequency. So you can see those are denoted in different colors. So at 50 hertz, we have it in blue all the way to 100 hertz. And what we find in the golden-colored manakin is that percent relaxation starts pretty high at around 70 to almost 100% early in a twitch series, but the muscle begins to fuse and we see a decrease in relaxation as the train proceeds. In the white-collared manakin, we don't see this. We just see muscle relaxation uniformly depleting as you increase the speed of muscle stimulation. We can then conceptualize this further by taking the slopes of these different lines that are plotted here and plotting those slopes as a function of stimulation frequency. So if the slope is below 0, we can then say that relaxation is decreasing and we're starting to build rapid fatigue. If the slope is about 0, then we're not seeing evidence of rapid fatigue. Likely in the case, you're just seeing the muscle begin to fuse. And so when we look at the two species, we see something pretty cool. We see rapid fatigue accumulating in golden-collared manakins, right? Because this slope seems to be negatively related to stimulation frequency. And the 95% confidence interval of this line crosses that 0 slope point right at about the species average roll snap speed. And so what this suggests is that selection is pushing this behavior to be as fast as it can, but it gets to a point where it then has to contend with endurance. So that trade-off between speed and endurance seems to be what's blocking further speed evolution of this signal. So in summary, a faster SH allows for a faster roll snap. Extreme speed incurs a cost to endurance, which would mean a shorter roll snap, and we know that they don't have shorter roll snaps. And overall, this suggests that the physiological trade-off between speed and endurance is actually mediating how muscle performance can underlie divergence in this display. So if that roll snap in the golden-collared manakin is going to get any faster, evolutionarily at a physiological level, we're going to have to contend with endurance. So with that, I'd like to thank a number of folks, Barney Schlinger, Mike Ryan, the folks of the Mannequin RCN, Miles MC for illustrations, a number of undergrads for their diligence in collecting muscle twitch data, funding agencies, and I can take any questions. Thank you.